Dr. Christian Hoffmann. I think all in Mexico know who are you. Some of us grow up in our specialty with your book. HIV book is very famous here in Mexico.
Oh, really?
Really?
No.
That's why all the physicians in Mexico know you because of your book.
Really?
You know, your very important cohort about integrase inhibitors. And the guy that is going to introduce you is César Lezama. César Lezama is infectious diseases doctor here in Mexico. He's working in the biggest clinic in Mexico, more than 10,000 patients on treatment. And he has a lot of experience too, treating patients with integrase inhibitors. Then, César, if you would like to introduce Dr. Christian Hoffmann, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'd like to introduce you the Dr. Christian Hoffmann. Christian Hoffmann started his work in 1995 as a research fellow at the University of Hamburg in Germany. He currently works at the ACH Hamburg, which is among of the 3 largest HIV centers in Germany, providing care to more than 3,500 HIV positive patients. Dr. Christian, welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you in our teaching platform.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so hello everybody, and thanks a lot for inviting me. And it's really a great pleasure for me to give you this talk about tolerability of integrase inhibitors in real life settings. And do you see my slides?
No yet, Dr. Hoffmann.
Not yet.
Please, if you want to share again your presentation.
Okay. So just it's not that easy. So do you see it?
No yet. You put share in the green arrow.
Yeah. Okay. Bildschirm.
You can find the screen with. Yeah. Right now.
Okay.
We can see your presentation.
Okay. All right. So tolerability of integrase in real life settings. I have 40 minutes, right? So how to not that easy. So these are my conflicts of interest, and as you can see, I've received money from many companies and tried my best to get money from all of them. So I think I will be able to give you a well-balanced and neutral overview on this tricky topic. And this is my real life, my real conflict of interest. Giving a talk to Mexican people after all what happened in 2018, I can tell you it still hurts. So my city, Hamburg, is located at northern Germany. It's not far from the border of Denmark, and it's not far from Berlin. And as many of you know, Berlin will be the host of the upcoming International AIDS Conference in 2021. And if you are planning to go to Berlin, take a one day off and come to Hamburg. It's not that far. It's about 1 hour and a half by train. And you should visit Hamburg. It's really a lovely place. This is the harbor of Hamburg, and it would be a good idea to come to Hamburg. So our office is directly located at the central station in Hamburg, and we take care about 3,500 patients in Germany, we have 88,000 patients, representing a prevalence of 0.3%, which I think it's pretty much the same as in Mexico. In Mexico, I've learned the prevalence is 0.3%, and as I mentioned, this is the same in Germany. So, do you see everything of my slides, or only a part of it? I'm not sure. So if you see everything, I would like to make a few points in advance, a few remarks, as integrase inhibitors are highly effective and extremely potent, and they are easy to take. And I think resistance is no longer a problem, especially with the second generation integrase inhibitors, bictegravir and dolutegravir. They have a high forgiveness, a low risk for interactions, and an individualized therapy is possible. And we have different STRs available in Europe. And these are the different formulations of the current integrase inhibitors. And as you see, we have different STRs. And during the last few months, we received several new drugs, including Juluca in May 2018, Biktarvy in June 2018, and Dovato in June 2019. And hopefully we will have Cabenuva, long-acting cabotegravir plus ribavirin by the end of this year. And as shown on this slide, these are the main steps integrase inhibitors during the last 5 to 6 years, and many of them are red, and these refer to integrase inhibitors. And at our center, we're treating about 90% of our patients with these new drugs, and about 60% of the patients are receiving drugs which have been approved during the last 3 years. So this is really treating the patients with very new drugs in which long-term experience is lacking. And if we talk about tolerability, I think in the time of these modern auto regimens where patients can expect a normal life expectancy in quantity and quality, I think the patient's tolerability demands are increasing. And I think even reversible and non-serious side effects deserve attention and further research, especially in an aging population that faces a decade-long exposure to integrase inhibitors. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about weight gain, neuropsychiatric adverse events, and teratogenicidad. Weight gain. Starting with weight gain, I think this is an issue, or this is what you don't need in Mexico. We have these problems in Europe as well, but Mexico, as I've learned, ranks as the most obese country in the world in adult obesity, and you know it better than I do. 24% of the population above the age of 15 years is obese in Mexico, and diabetes associated with obesity is the largest single killer of Mexicans. So this is something you don't need. And I want to start with a patient which may reflect the problems we are facing when we take care of these patients. This is a young 35 years old man infected in 2015 with HIV, and he was put on Triomec in 2015, and then in June 2018, when Biktarvy became available, he switched to Biktarvy, and then in April last year, he made his first visit to Hamburg at our Center for Second Opinion, and he complained about his doctor, and he still lives at Berlin, and he said, my doctor doesn't take me seriously, and he complained about weight gain, which was 8 kilograms, representing 9% since 2015. And he said, I didn't change anything, my diet habits, my eating habits, exercise, and but I gained these 8 kilograms. So I had no good idea. At this time, I was under the impression of the CROI meeting last year, and I switched him to the Srigo TDF, 3TC, and the new NNRTI doravirine. And he came back in November 2019, last year, and he said, okay, I've lost 6 kilograms and I will never go back to my Berlin doctor. And he only talks about lifestyle. So this may reflect the problems we are facing, and I think it's a good idea to take the patient seriously. So as I mentioned, I was under the impression of the CROI meeting, and many of you are, I'm sure, are aware of the data presented there. And there were 6 large cohorts, 5 of them reporting on weight gain with integrase inhibitors and about in the range of 1 or 2 kilograms per year. And this was seen preferentially in women and in Black people, and there was a trend towards dolutegravir compared to first generation integrase inhibitors. And I think after the CROI meeting, there were huge controversy and discussions and about the caveats we have to consider.
Dr. Hoffmann, please let me interrupt a moment, please. Your presentation doesn't look complete in our screen. Okay. I don't know if you put the sharing the complete screen.
No better?
Okay.
Hopefully it's now better. So I think
it's better.
Yeah, I think no. Sorry. So
thank you.
I think we have to consider the caveats with weight gain. And one thing is the cohort studies. You never have perfect data in cohort studies, as the question is always who was weighed when and why. And if you have the patients who complain, you have a selection bias. And I don't see any cohort in the world where the weight is measured in a standardized way. So this is really a caveat we have to consider. And the other thing is the obesity prevalence is rising worldwide. And if you consider the normal weight gain in the US general population, this is about 1 kilogram per year. And I think it's the same in Europe or in Mexico. And the contributors to body weight are very heterogeneous. Diet, activity, environment, comorbidities, co-medications, habits, etc. And people with HIV, especially in the US, are often situated in an obesogenic environment. So in difficult socio-economic settings. So this also has to be considered. And there are different drug classes involved. There may be confounders. No antiretroviral agent is given as a single agent. We have to consider the backbone. There's a difference between abicipar and dolutegravir. The backbone, abicipar with TAF and dolutegravir preferentially with abacavir. And we have to consider the catabolic effects of TDF and ABC, possibly driven in part by tolerability. And the most important thing, at least in treatment-naive patients, is the so-called return to normal effect. So a faster reduction of viral load with integrase inhibitors, reversion of inflammation. And this could contribute to the weight gain seen in patients treated with integrase inhibitors. So the question is that really all return to health? And I think this is the slide, the most frequently shown slide during the last 12 months in HIV research. This is data from the North American NACOT cohort, treatment-naive patients, 24,000 patients, and there is an increase during the first year, which is by far more pronounced, and then there seems to be a plateau after 1 year or 2 years. But then, and this is the second most frequently shown slide, I think, this is treatment from, this is data from treatment experienced patients, and there seems to be an increase of the weight in these pre-treated patients after the switch to the integrase inhibitors. However, the follow-up in this cohort study was short. And then during the summer last year, we had the data from the advanced trial, treatment-naive patients, more than 1,000 patients from South Africa. And this was really of concern. If you look at the data in women above and men, it's a lower figure. And if we see, if you look at the data, especially in women, there's a 9.2 kilogram weight gain seen with dolutegravir and TAF, compared to 5 kilogram with dolutegravir and TDF, and standard arm efavirenz almost 3 kilo. And although the effect was less pronounced in men, it was, I think, the same. However, there seems to be no plateau in the women, and this was really of concern, and I think this was the most discussed study at the International AIDS Conference in Mexico. Unfortunately, in the advanced trial, DEXA scans were performed initially in order to measure differences in bone density. However, this is really a good opportunity, or this was a good opportunity to measure the body composition. And these are the data in women at 48 weeks and 96 weeks. And as you see, it's the majority or most, the 70% of the kilograms weight gained were lymph fat and trunk fat. So this is not a return to health effect. This is a weight gain, and this is a fat gain. So this was of concern. And this is data from 2 large trials comparing bictegravir versus dolutegravir, and this is long-term follow-up data, 3 years, week 144. And as you see here, it's a weight gain about 4 to 5 kilograms at 3 years. And keep in mind that in these 2 large clinical trials, the vast majority of the patients, 90%, were asymptomatic, and the CD4 cells were pretty high. So this is not return to normal, not all return to normal effect. So, and as you can imagine, this was of concern for the manufacturer of the drugs, and this, especially Gilead, has done much efforts to analyze their data from randomized clinical trials, and this is a pooled analysis from 8 trials. And as you see here, it's preferentially the black female, the black male, and it's less pronounced in non-black female and non-black male. And then if you look at the different drug classes, you see differences more pronounced in integrase compared to PIs and compared to NNRTIs, and you see bictegravir and dolutegravir more pronounced and compared to abictegravir. And then somewhat somewhat surprising, a more pronounced effect in patients treated with TAF and their backbone. So I think Gilead showed exactly the same as seen in the clinical practice and the real life settings. And what was really of concern was the fact that there were many patients who gained weight in about more than 10% of their initial body weight, and this was 17% after 96 weeks, and this is a lot. And they've also performed an analysis comparing TAF versus TDF in both treatment-naive and biologically suppressed patients, and as shown here, there's an increase of the weight of about 2 kilograms in patients treated with TAF compared to patients treated with TDF. And then I think the best study analyzing effects in clinical practice is the Swiss cohort from Switzerland, and it's very well documented. And what they've done in their analysis, which was presented at the European conference at Basel last year, was they've looked at more than 2,000 patients treated in their cohort who were on antiviral therapy for at least 18 months with a viral load of less than 50. And what they've done, they looked at the weight before the switch and after the switch to dolutegravir. And as you see here, the increase was already present prior to the switch to dolutegravir in about 1.57 kilograms, but this increase to 0.72 kilograms per year after the switch of dolutegravir. And the effect was much more pronounced in patients who started with TAF at the same time. However, this number was low because there's no single tablet regimen available combining TAF and dolutegravir. And again, a huge number of patients gained more than 5%, 22% of the patients gained more than 5% since their switch to dolutegravir. And the risk factors, again, female gender, black ethnicity, younger age, current smoker, and non-obesity. And if you look at the switch data, at the switch randomized trials, we have now the evidence from the NEAT trial, and in this trial, the NEAT 022 trial, dolutegravir after PIs, there was an increase with dolutegravir of about almost 1 kilogram after 1 year. And we have the 30 studies, bictegravir or dolutegravir after dolutegravir plus TDF or TAF, and there were no differences between bictegravir and dolutegravir. However, there was a pronounced effect seen with TAF and the backbone. And we have a trial in women, bictegravir after different regimens, and there was a clear effect, clear weight gain with bictegravir after 1 year of about 1 kilogram. And the pooled data from Gilead TAF after TDF, and there was an increase of 2 kilograms after 2 years seen with TAF compared to TDF. And then we have the data from the Tango trial, dolutegravir and 3-2C after TAF-based antiretroviral therapy, and there were no differences. So, and this is a slide I've stolen from Andrew Hill, my colleague from the UK, who performed, who's done a nice oral presentation at the European AIDS conference in October, and he showed on this slide the drivers of weight gain and the drivers of weight loss. And you see the low CD4 cells, the high viral load. This is the return to normal effect, I think. But it's dolutegravir and bictegravir, and the effect is much more pronounced in women and in black people. And there may be a driver of TDF may be a driver of weight loss. However, I would like to add TAF, and I think it's also a driver of weight gain. So to conclude the weight gain issues, I think the data from both clinical reality and randomized trials, there is evidence for an excess weight gain seen with InSTIs. And it's not lipid dystrophy, and it's not return to normal, or not only return to normal. Many open questions remain. Who is affected? Only black women. Is there any plateau? What are the mechanisms, the clinical implications, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, role of TAF? Many open questions. And I think what is now needed is standardized measurement of weight in all future randomized clinical trials and detailed information on risk factors. And I think we also need controlled switch studies replacing integrase and TAF. And I don't think we need more uncontrolled cohort studies. However, we will see a lot of these data coming during the next conferences, I'm sure. But we also need more basic science about predispositions, CNS or CNS effects, and we'll later come to this issue. So neuropsychiatric adverse events. This all began in February 2016, and I remember well that afternoon standing in front of this poster from the Netherlands, where the colleagues reported on the discontinuation of about 14% within the first few weeks due to adverse events, especially sleep disorders and psychiatric problems. And I really, I thought, I've seen many patients in the past, and I was really concerned because I didn't take my patients seriously and I didn't believe them about their problems with these drugs. And after my return from the CROI, we immediately started an analysis in our own cohort. And this is what we've published a few years ago in HIV medicine, where we looked at discontinuations due to neuropsychiatric adverse events in patients treated with dolutegravir and compared to raltegravir and abitagravir, and you see a difference between these compounds. However, we have to keep in mind that it's about 90% of the patients are tolerating dolutegravir, and there's in these patients, most of these patients, there are no problems. So it's about 5 to 6% who have to discontinue dolutegravir due to neuropsychiatric events, but this is much lower with abitagravir and raltegravir. So we also try to identify risk factors, and we've seen more discontinuations in female patients. We've seen more discontinuations in older patients, and we've seen more discontinuations in patients who had initiated abacavir at the same time. So what symptoms are we talking about? We have performed a study with questionnaires where we asked the patients about their symptoms, and as shown here, it's very heterogeneous. Many patients have several symptoms. It's headache, dizziness, paresthesia, irritability, poor concentration, nervousness, depression, and in most patients, almost 80%, it's sleep disturbances, insomnia. But we are not the only one who see this. This is data from the UK, from London, different hospitals, more than 2,000 patients, and they are now in the range of 12% of discontinuations due to all adverse events, and neuropsychiatric events, it's about 6.3%. And as shown on the left, it's mainly sleep disturbance, psychiatric and nervous system, whatever this is. And these are the main symptoms leading to discontinuation. And if we look at what happened after withdrawal of dolutegravir, you see that there is a full or partial resolution seen in most patients. So this is clearly a fact of dolutegravir. So and if we look at the different clinical cohorts in neuropsychiatric events leading to discontinuation, the highest number comes from Amsterdam. This was the initial report, reporting 10%. We have about 5 to 6%, the same in London. And you see there are differences compared to, for example, to Spain, where a huge number of patients were analyzed, of huge cohorts. And I spent a lot of time talking with Josep Libre from Barcelona, who performed these studies, and he told me that the differences between a single center reaches in Barcelona from 0 to 7%, and this illustrates that the discontinuation strongly depends from the awareness and the perception and the management the treating physician. And if we look at the randomized trials, the rate were less than 1%. And however, a meta-analysis performed by Andrew Hill, analyzing all 17 randomized trials, more than 10,000 patients exposed, there was indeed an increased risk of insomnia. And there were much higher rates for drug-related adverse events in larger switch trials, such as SWORD or striving. And this illustrates that these events were present in the randomized clinical trials, but they did not lead to discontinuation. And as you know, the barriers for treatment change in randomized clinical trials are much higher than in clinical practice. So the answer from the manufacturer were clear. They said, okay, we've looked at our data and we didn't find it. And so this is due to the high background rate of psychiatric conditions, and it's very difficult, and so on. And I think we have to take on the challenge. And that's what we've done. We performed a sub-analysis, and we looked at patients with a prior depression, and so with a background of psychiatric conditions, and we did not see any difference between patients with or without depressive disorders. But what we also have analyzed is what happened with the patients after the switch to other treatments. And the vast majority of the patients, almost 80%, became happy with the subsequent regimen. So it's clearly an effect of dolutegravir and not an effect of the psycho patient. So what about bictegravir? And this is what is, I think, in your focus now. Bictegravir became available in June 2018. And you will ask me, why do you have so high numbers of patients treated with bictegravir? And I just want to try to explain. Bictegravir was when it came to the market, it was relatively cheap in Germany, relatively cheap, and many patients, many physicians switched the treatments to Biktarvy due to economical reasons. And as shown on the right side, dolutegravir plus FTAF is really in Germany is a very expensive treatment. It's about 1,400 euro, and this led to the decision many treating physicians at our center to switch to Biktarvy. And you see also a huge number of patients with Genvoya, and the prevention of drug-drug interactions was also a strong frequent reason to switch, and also convenience. So and also prevention of cardiovascular disease. We had several patients on Triomec who switched. So the reasons were heterogeneous, but Biktarvy was cheap, had no interaction problems, was a single tablet regimen, did not contain abacavir. So these were the reasons why we switched so many patients to Biktarvy. And we had, during a few months, we had almost 1,000 patients on this drug. So, and this is the data on the discontinuation due to neuropsychiatric events. And as you see, the follow-up for Biktarvy is pretty short, not 10 months, compared to dolutegravir, which has been approved in 2014. And if we look at the rates, at the discontinuation rates, we're talking here about 94%. So the risk was pretty much the same as seen with dolutegravir, around 3% after 6 to 12 months. So our experience of bictegravir in clinical practice, the key findings were that the discontinuation rates were about 3.3% due to neuropsychiatric events. There were some patients with gastrointestinal problems, however, these rates were low. The rates were comparable to dolutegravir, but they were higher than in randomized clinical trials. This may be, and the cause may be lower barriers for art modifications. The symptoms were mainly, as seen with dolutegravir, insomnia, nervousness, depression, dizziness, and poor concentration. And the events were mild to moderate, and they quickly resolved after discontinuation. And in most patients, the subsequent therapy was tolerated well and effective for at least 3 months. And in contrast to dolutegravir, female gender and older age were not predicted, but a pre-existing depression. And this may also indicate an increased awareness of the physicians with regard to InSTI adverse events. There was a high variability between physicians, and this may reflect the differences in awareness and perception, assessment and management of these events. And what was somewhat surprising was that there was a low cross-intolerance, and only 4 of 35 patients who had discontinued, who had to discontinue dolutegravir, also stopped bictegravir. And in 11 out of 16 patients who had discontinued bictegravir had no tolerability issues with dolutegravir. So the cross-intolerance was pretty low, and this was, for me, somewhat surprising. So to conclude, the neuropsychiatric events with integrase in clinical practice, dolutegravir and bictegravir, I think it's the same discontinuation rates, about 5 to 8% after 1 year. These events are usually mild and moderate. They are reversible, they are variable. Sleep disorders, dizziness, sometimes also depression, paresthesia, or the feeling of electricity. The frequency of discontinuations depends heavily on the treating physicians. And there's a low cross-intolerance between bictegravir and dolutegravir. And I think it's not the psychiatric comorbidity in HIV-infected patients. And it will remain very difficult to objectify, to measure, and to determine morphological correlates. The mechanisms are unclear. It's unclear whether this is a class effect. Dolutegravir has a lower CNS penetration. Is this a reason? What about plasma levels? There's no clear picture on dolutegravir plasma levels. There is one study from Japan showing somewhat higher levels, plasma levels with CNS symptoms, somewhat higher. And there's another study from the UK showing increased levels in patients older than 60 years. We, in our own cohort, we didn't find any differences between patients who had to discontinue dolutegravir and those who have tolerated dolutegravir for at least 12 months. So there were no differences, and I think this is not a clear picture that high dolutegravir levels may cause these events. So no clear picture in the plasma, and we had some patients very high levels and with very good tolerability, and with some cases with very low levels and intolerability. And there's no data for dolutegravir PK in the CNS, no data for bictegravir. There is one study from Japan suggesting that gene variants may explain some cases for dolutegravir intolerability. I'm not sure if this is really true. And there is, at Mexico, at the IIS, was an interesting report about significant lower magnesium levels for dolutegravir containing regimens. This is really interesting. However, this is preliminary data. And there is in vitro 64% inhibition in the MC4 receptor binding assay by dolutegravir. Whatever this means, however, this receptor is involved in many in many things: anxiety, depression, regulation of appetite, energy balance. Maybe there's a link between weight gain and neuropsychiatric events. We don't know this, and hopefully we will see more on this topic at the CROI meeting this year. yeah, other ideas, it's open for discussion. Just a few words about pregnancy. Many of you have become aware of the data presented from the CIPAMO trial, and this was the initial report in the New England Journal in 2018, which really was of concern, and there was a signal for neurotube defects seen with dolutegravir exposure at conception, and the lower 95% confidence interval is shown here by the arrow, was pretty high compared to the red bar, which is I would say the random noise, which is observed with non-dolutegravir exposure expected. And this was a mathematical model, very elegant, and they said, okay, we have now 400 patients, and we would need about 1,500 patients to reach this bar. And if we have another case, we would need about 2,000 patients, and this is what happens. They had another case, but this was seen in a huge number of dolutegravir conception exposures, and as you see, the curve is almost reaching the red bar, so the prevalence observed with non-dolutegravir exposure. So I think this signal is almost refuted, and this has led to the change of the World Health Organization recommendation, and they now recommend dolutegravir as preferred HIV treatment option in all populations based on new evidence assessing benefits and risk, and this is exactly what the CIPAMO trial showed. However, I think what we do, including myself, we have so many pregnancies, and we have so many HIV exposed uninfected kids, and the number is incredible high. I mean, it's good news, but it's 1.3 million HIV exposed and uninfected kids per year, and we have a total of 15 million infants in the 2018, and the vast majority now is exposed to antiretroviral therapy as well. And this is a nice overview reported in a few weeks ago at Current HIV or AIDS Reports, and they they gave an overview about the evidence for mitochondrial dysfunction, adverse birth outcomes, impaired infant growth, metabolic complication, and so on, and immune activation, and all these things. And I think this should be more in our focus. And I think there's much work to be done. And it's very tough, a tough area of research, because we don't know what is HIV, what is caused by antiretroviral agents, what is environment, what is confounding, what is relevant, and what can be modified. And there are many, many open questions, and I think this is really an important topic, and we have to focus on this. So to conclude, integrase inhibitors are safe, and they are in our center, but I think worldwide, substantial integral part of modern art. However, I think weight gain, neuropsychiatric events, and teratogenity have to be considered. And it's good to have other options, and I think good not to forget the NNRTIs, RTIs and the PIs. And I think there's no need to over-dramatize these effects or nor to downplay these issues. We don't have long-term experience. This is a new drug class with limited experience, and I think the phase 1 to 3 studies performed by manufacturers are not sufficient to fully assess a complete safety profile. And this is what we've seen with the lipodystrophy in the 90s, where this became obvious years after approval of these drugs. And I think also that independent clinical research is urgently needed. And this is my last slide, and I'd like to thank for your attention. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hoffmann. I have many questions, but I start with what do you think that is the pathogenic mechanisms by patients using an InSTI gain weight? What do you think about that? What is your theory about that?
I think it is a receptor in the brain. I think it's just a little bit more appetite. It's not a lipid dystrophy. It's not a severe lipid disturbance. It's just eating a little bit too much, and I think this is due to receptor occupation. But I'm not so into these, brain receptors. I think the melanocortin 4 receptor is a very interesting model. I'm not sure whether this is the solution, but this may be. I don't know. But it's not a lipid dystrophy. It's not a complex. It's not a complex disease. It's just in many patients they say after switching back, my feeling of I need to eat something, and it's gone after switching away from integrals a little bit. So I think it's appetite.
Yeah, in our country, in the Mexican Social Security Institute, which is one of the ways that you have medical attention in Mexico, there is a plan to switch all patients with efavirenz or protease inhibitors to big. What do you think? This is a good idea, or what is your opinion about that?
In the case of efavirenz, I think it's a good idea. But I'm not I would prevent to switch all patients to one single regimen. And we have still patients, we have many patients who are still on NNRTIs. In Germany, we have doravirine, we have now nevirapine and doravirine, and we also have many patients on Simtuza, which is a single tablet regimen containing darunavir, and we're using these options. I mean, I think switching all patients to one combination, I'm not sure whether this is a good idea.
And in our clinical experience, we have seen some women who have increased amounts on weight, for example, 15 kilos in a period of 6 months, more or less. What do you recommend doing with these patients who do not want to be obese or thin and in this kind of aspect in your body?
Yeah. I must confess, I mean, the first thing is to take these women seriously and just not talking only about lifestyle issues or eating habits. So this is one thing you should address. But the other thing is in my clinical practice, I switch these women to other combinations. And if there's no change, or if there's still a further increase, then we can go back and talking about lifestyle and about other treatments for obesity. But my first step would be to switch to a TAF-free and an integrase inhibitor-free regimen.
I don't know if is there any other question for the audience?
Yeah, I have a question for Dr. Christian. Thank you very much for your very interesting talk, Dr. Hoffman. We would like to ask you something that is not in that is off label regarding Biktarvy in patients who fail with efavirenz, for example. We have some data of the study 4030 that patients who have mutations and with Biktarvy is a very good option in this patient, but I don't know if you have experience in patients who have failed to efavirenz, maybe?
Yes, we have. And we have several patients with resistance mutations, with historical resistance mutations. And what we've seen is that we don't have a single case, up to now, we don't have a single case with virological failure. So we had some patients with 2 drug class resistance, with resistance against all NNRTIs and all nucleoside analogs, and Biktarvy, up to now, Biktarvy works well. So I think what we've seen in this study, in this randomized trial you mentioned, this is also seen in clinical practice. So this is a really potent drug with a high resistance barrier.
Thank you. And my second question is regarding the combination Biktarvy with darunavir. Maybe you saw the data in Switzerland recently in Basel, that there was a study with a combination of Biktarvy with darunavir covistat and with good results, but I don't know what do you think about it, because the TAF is the 25 milligrams. That is maybe not the best option to combine with darunavir covistat. That I think you saw yesterday. You told me yesterday that you don't have Prescovics in Germany.
We don't have it. So in our practice, it's more the combination of Simtuza, which is TAF, FDC, darunavir, and Kobe plus TVK plus dolutegravir. So the option Biktarvy plus darunavir plus covistat in our country is not a good idea, a good solution, because many tablets, and I think dolutegravir and bictegravir have the same resistance profile and maybe the same resistance barrier. So they should be, both should work, both drug combinations should work.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Dr. Christian.
Dr. Alberto.
Yeah, I want to ask you something, Dr. Hoffman. Hello, my name is Alberto. I'm a medicine student. If we can't stop weight gain in our patients, it means, I mean, if they follow a diet and they make exercise and all stuff like that, and we can't stop that they keep gaining weight and keep gaining kilograms and kilograms, should we change totally his medications? I mean, change all the regime from another to stop the gain weight, or we should keep trying to follow the basic stuff to lose that weight?
Yeah, it's a difficult question. I mean, it's for us in Germany, it's very easy to switch, and it's very easy to switch therapy. And I think we should do both. We should talk about, you know, lifestyle and these issues, and I always discuss the weight gain contributors with my patients, and I tell them it's, you know, it's a very fragile balance, the weight gain, and if you eat just a few calories more than you need every day, you will gain several kilos per year. So I try to address both issues, but if the patients, if you cannot stop the weight gain, I would switch. And we have in Germany, we have now the option of doravirine plus TDF, so a single tablet regimen without TAF and without an integrase inhibitor, and this is I think in a very good combination. If you have asked me 2 years ago, I would have said that the Strigo is not it's not an important option. But during the last month, we've seen many patients switching to this combination.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you very much.
Doctor, regarding body composition and weight gain, do you think that could have implication for cardiovascular risks later in our patients?
I think so. If you look at the women in South Africa, if you look at 9 kilogram after 2 years, we don't know what happens after 3 years or 5 years. I think gaining 2 or 3 kilos, that's not that much. But if this continues and if we don't have a plateau, then this indeed will have implications for cardiovascular disease and for diabetes.
And what scheme do you recommend for patients with a high cardiovascular risk at the presentation?
I mean, we have to keep in mind that not all patients are gaining weight. And we have some data from some cohort studies with an increased risk for abacavir, for darunavir, so the PIs. So if you ask me which drug combination, I would take an integrase inhibitor. However, if the patients gain, if there's weight gain, considerable weight gain, I would switch the patient. But I would not use abacavir and not use PIs in these patients with a high cardiovascular risk.
Are there some questions for the audience? Dr. Mata, anybody else?
No, I really, my two important question was about to use Biktarvy in patients who failed before with fibrosis, for example, and regarding cardiovascular risks, right? Because some of our patients, abacavir is a problem, and what happens if Biktarvy is increasing some cholesterol, and that could be a problem. But
okay.
So when will Biktarvy be available in Mexico? When is it? It's already available?
Yes, Biktarvy was already is available since I think August for some hospital, and
yeah,
for the rest of the country.
Since April or May in the last year.
Okay. And it's also cheaper than other drugs as in Europe, or it's the same?
It's pretty much similar, but we have not yet doravirine in our stock.
Mm-hmm.
But the other drugs we have, the other drugs we have Prescovix,
Raltegravir,
Dolutegravir.
Okay.
Well, but is anybody else have a question for the Dr. Hoffmann? Dr. Hoffmann, it's a great pleasure and honor to hear you. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Yeah, it has been a pleasure. Have a good night. However, at your time it's now 4 p.m., right?
Thank you very much.
It's almost midnight, and I would drink a Mexican beer.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's great, Dr. Hoffmann.
it's a very good beer. I mean, in Germany we like it. We like it. So have a nice day.
Thank you. We hope to see you soon here.
Yeah,
perhaps.
we would like.
Okay, thank
Thank you
you.
very much, Dr.
Thank
Christian.
you very much. So bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.